we were invisible.
Mm.
And as soon as I started writing those articles, other women came down to the paper and started writing too.
Hi everyone, Elle Ballard is here today on our next podcast episode with my next guest, Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay. Welcome.
Hi, Elle, it's so good to see you.
So good to be with you today. I am excited for this conversation. We're going to touch on a lot of value here. But before we jump on, I want to introduce Lindsay Whiting. Lindsay Whiting is a book coach who helps business professionals, public speakers, advocates, educators, and experts through the transformative journey from writer to published author. Her decades-long career in print management and publishing and as an award-winning author perfectly positioned her to act as your book project manager and accountability buddy. I love that. Welcome. So why this field and what makes you unique in being in this field?
Well, I think I was kind of lucky because I started young. I started in journalism when I was about 18 years old when I went to the University of Massachusetts. And it was kind of serendipitous because I wasn't expecting to go into journalism. I started in English and I wasn't sure what I would do. But what I found was that our campus newspaper had a lot of sports in it, but nothing to do with women's sports. And I was an athlete. So I just marched down there to the office and I was like, how come there's no women's sports in here? And the sports editor just looked at me and said, why don't you do it? And that was kind of how I got into journalism because I just felt that women's images and visibility were just, we were invisible.
Mm.
And as soon as I started writing those articles, other women came down to the paper and started writing too. And so within those 4 years at the university, I went from being a little cub reporter to being one of the editors, sports editors.
Wow.
And that allows you to make a lot of choices. You get to place the articles, you get to choose them, you get to choose the photographs, the headlines, and the placements. And that changed things a lot. And then the last thing I did before I left was I nominated another woman for sports editor, and she was the very first top sports editor at the paper, but then she ended up going to work for the Boston Globe after she graduated.
Mm.
So this is how we do it, bit by bit. And I learned my craft in college. And after that, I just realized, the visibility of women and our voices are something that really need to be heard.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been in printing and publishing my whole career.
Beautiful. I love that story. I didn't know that story about you. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And thank you for leading the way.
Well, I just saw Tara Vanderveer, who coaches Stanford women's basketball. She has the most uh, wins of any coach, NCAA coach ever. There was an article about it, and her mother said to her, Tara, come in, come in and study. Basketball will take you nowhere. And now she's the top coach in the whole country. So go figure. And she was my era. She was, driving the van and, nobody was paying any attention to women's college sports in the 70s.
Yeah, good for her.
So it was people like me and her that were just chipping away, trying to get some visibility and some budgets for the programs.
Yes.
Title IX changed things. In 1972, Title IX came in and, made it so that women's sports on collegiate level had to be equal to the men's. So, and, actually one of my swimming buddies was one of the first people to get a swimming scholarship. She got a small swimming scholarship at UMass.
I love it. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for leading the way again. It's beautiful. So because you have been in this field of work for so many years, you have such a rich experience, as well as I'm sure lessons.
Yes.
What would be one of your biggest lessons that you had to learn, maybe challenges that you want to share that you had to overcome?
I would say if I were to talk to any businesswoman today who's starting her career or her business, sort of an entrepreneurial small business, make sure that you have enough money and cash flow to get through the first 3 to 5 years because a lot of people, they don't do their projections, they run out of cash, and then they have to quit.
Yeah.
That's she who endures will win.
Mm.
That's something I learned in my sports career is practice, 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 endurance, endurance, endurance. You'll never win if you quit, and you won't get better if you quit. So my one of my better qualities is I can outlast most people just because I've started 2 businesses. And my first one was a greeting card company back in the early mid 90s, and I ran it for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
But that industry is extremely capital intensive because I had to print inventory. I had to print the cards. And then you have to hold them in inventory as you sell them. So you really have to have a handle on cash flow, cost of goods, overhead,
Mm-hmm.
fixed costs. It wouldn't hurt to take a course
Yeah.
in, learning how to read profit and loss and a balance sheet. I recommend that to every woman going into business. Learn how to read profit and loss and balance sheets. Know how to finance your company for the first 3 to 5 years so that you can make it to profitability.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my biggest pieces of advice.
Yeah, that's so great. Because we don't learn that, right? And I love how simple it is, but at the same time, it's so deep. Still a lot of people don't grasp the what that actually means for the business. And it's
No, they don't. And they
yeah,
don't even understand it. I talked to a
right.
guy who was in the calendar business and he had come from Chase Manhattan. He was an acquisitions manager at Chase Manhattan. We were going to partner, and I looked at his balance sheet and his profit and loss, and I diagnosed it. And I said, "You're paying too much for your product. You're paying the artist too much. You're never going to be able to make a profit."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "These numbers need to be flipped." And this is a guy who worked for Chase Manhattan, acquisitions and mergers. And
Yeah.
I'm just, a journalism
Yeah.
person who's telling him how to read a
Yeah.
balance sheet.
Yeah. And
People don't understand finances at all.
yeah, it's just so good. And I had to learn it too, in my business. And my biggest thing was, coming from the corporate, coming from the employee mindset, you don't know it all. So coming in and having worked for some of the biggest corporations before, like having that completely different mindset. And so I overspent at the beginning. I remember, and actually talk about that too, that it's a lot of the time we project the cash flow and then
Doesn't materialize.
it doesn't materialize, or we plan on maybe breaking even in 3 years, and usually it's what, sometimes.
Five.
So
That's what I tell
great,
people. It's like
great
people
advice.
used to call me at my greeting card company and say, "Hi, I'm an artist. I want to start a greeting card company. Can you give me advice?"
Yeah.
And I would just say to them, if you have $75,000 in 3 to 5 years, sure, go ahead. And you have a 20% chance of succeeding. Would you take those odds? I scare them from the beginning because I hate for people to do it and then to fail and to lose all their money. So
Yeah.
I scare them from the beginning. And then if they're bold enough to go by that gate, then I say, good luck to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What can you do?
It's great. Yeah, that's a great advice. And I love the analogy with sports, the quotes on endurance, analogy between business and sports. I love that because
It's so
so
true.
true. And it's so connected because it's all
Yeah.
about mindset and how we look at things, right?
Yes, and I've heard so many women recently say that out loud. They've said, "Well, my sports background perfectly positioned me for this because I have this mindset." Because you don't always win when you're playing sports, and you
Yeah.
know that, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
you just want to get your averages up.
Yeah. Just really how many times you tried and failed at the end of the day versus how many times you won, right? Because of the
Right.
learning in that comes with all of that. I
Exactly.
love it. I love this conversation. I love this so much.
Right.
So awesome. What do you think are the three biggest mistakes that self-publishers make? And I've noticed during pandemic and post-pandemic now there are so many, people that want to write books and multi-author books, their own books, and then there is this self-publish, not self-publish, and so if they do choose self-publish route, what would be three biggest mistakes that
Well,
people?
what I find is that people who want to self-publish, usually I'm working with people on their first books. And a lot of times people come in and they're not aware of what the research and the due diligence that they need to do.
Mhm.
There's a lot of moving parts that need to come together to make a satisfying whole and a successful product, which is your final book. And so the three biggest mistakes that I find are that new authors sometimes neglect to get a developmental editor. A lot of people know what copy editors are, who fix your grammar, your sentences, your punctuation, fact checking, that sort of thing. They polish it.
Mhm.
But a developmental editor comes first, and that person works on the big picture of structure, organization, voice, flow, transitions, summaries, all of those types of things. And that's what really drives the reader experience. It's all of those structural things that are going to make it a smooth reading experience. And
Yeah.
so that's huge.
Mhm.
Um, Number two, people neglect to find or hire book designers. Anybody can throw something on a page in Word, but that's not how a book is designed. And you need to find somebody who's experienced with book design because a book cover is a very specialized product. It's not like marketing. It's not like any other kind of piece. You have to get somebody's attention in a few seconds.
Yeah.
You have to have a great title and high contrast cover, as
Mhm.
well as all the other sort of standing operating procedures and best practices. If you haven't been designing books, you're not going to know what that is and what those are. So you have to rely on a professional book designer.
Mhm.
Last item is a sales and marketing plan. A lot of times a new author will think, oh, well, I did the book. It's done now. Why aren't people buying it? And you have to create a pre-launch runway, get people to know about your book, do outreach and all kinds of platform building uh, efforts so that you can market and sell your book for years to come. You know, your book is going to be in the marketplace for at least 3 to 5 years, if not longer. I have books in the marketplace over 10 years. That's a billboard. You know, you want to protect your reputation. You're going to be up on Amazon and other sites. You're going to have a platform and you're going to have to live with this book for quite a while. So you really want to make sure that it's to the best of your ability because it's going to represent you, your platform, your business, and your reputation. So those are the three items
That's
that
great.
I think are most important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love all of the what you mentioned, and I'm just as I'm in the process myself.
Right.
So good. Thank you. So we are on Empowered Global Women podcast, and of course, everyone that I interview is a woman of the world. We are all women of the world, and I like to ask this question of what does it mean for you to be a woman of the world?
You know, I think you and I were talking about it earlier. And of course, you know, publishing and publishers and bookstores were one of the first early adopters of the internet. And even today, the Ingram company is the biggest book distributor in the world. And they have plants and distribution in various countries as well.
Mhm.
So, in fact, I just chatted with an author from the Bay Area who was talking about distribution, bulk distribution in the UK. And she didn't want to incur all these shipping charges to ship all these books over there. She has a publisher, it's a conventional publisher, but a lot of conventional publishers will use print on demand technologies when they have plants and printing companies in other countries. So she can print in the UK, probably through her publisher. They can just uh, get together with a digital printing company and print that order specifically for that customer as a bulk order. And then they don't have to ship across the Atlantic. So there's a lot of different things that go on. Of course, with the internet, I'm working, and a lot of people, as you know, you're working with all these women who come to the United States from other countries.
Yeah.
And I've also talked to many people from many women, especially from other countries. I'm working with a Russian immigrant now. She married an American years ago. She lives in Texas, but she's writing about her life. And her mother was a scientist in Russia.
Mm.
And now this gal is also a scientist. And now she lives here. And she has daughters, adult daughters now. We're going into three generations of female scientists from Russia.
Mm.
And she's writing a memoir that's going to be very interesting, insights on how she did all of these things, came from Russia, dealt with family issues, dealt with marriage to a US citizen, et cetera, and how she made these difficult decisions. So,
Yeah.
on some level, this is a prototypical woman of the world who is sharing her knowledge, just like your groups do, with how to integrate into a new culture.
Yeah.
Um, I've talked to an Afghan woman. I've talked to women who are coming from countries where they are fleeing because of wars. It's just astounding what you learn once you get on the internet. I have tech people in India that I've worked with. Um, there's all kinds of people that you can now easily connect with online and find people that can help you. So, the internet and that connection is my global,
Mhm.
umbilical cord.
Yeah.
Um, and all the women that come here and the people that are here that are writing books. It's just it can go either way because there's so many people in the United States that are from all over the world.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, it's yeah, and you are working with writers, so with each individual story comes this richness of so many lives, right? And by
Amazing. I live for the stories. I'm telling you,
uh,
even if somebody doesn't end up working with me, they
um,
tell me their story.
yeah.
So I'm like hearing all these rich, evocative, amazing, challenging stories.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we're talking jail time, crimes, murders, as well as all of the other amazing things of overcoming adversity and winning and being chosen and being published and
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing, amazing stories.
So our last section of our conversation today is rapid fire questions.
Uh-oh, I'm ready.
They're not too bad, I promise.
Okay.
Five of them. So, my first question is, your favorite book name is
You mean my favorite book of all
your favorite
time?
book of all times? Mhm.
Wow, that's big. Especially because I'm a book coach and I'm reading constantly.
Oh, yeah.
That's really hard, but I would say that off the top of my head, for poetry, Adrienne Rich and Jane Hirschfield.
Mm,
Right now, I am reading an incredible memoir that's up for a National Book Award. It's a Bay Area author, Susan Ito, Ito. Her book title is called "I Would Meet You Anywhere." It's an adoption story, but it's bigger than an adoption. It's a really amazing story of identity, adoption, all kinds of things.
wow.
But it's fantastic. Every page leads to the next page and the next. It's like, I swear to God, I get up in the morning and I mean, I've only got the book yesterday, but I'm almost done.
Right. Yeah, there's those
So
books. I love
anyway,
the books.
I
Yeah,
love
go ahead.
memoirs. I
Yeah.
love books. I love books about metaphysics, spirituality, personal growth and development. That's really my genre.
So second is beach or mountains.
Mountains,
Okay. Favorite international destination to visit?
Italy,
Summer or winter?
summer.
And my final question is things that you have discovered about yourself recently.
Well, I actually had a woman who's a public speaker
Uh-huh.
see one of my, well, she heard one of my audio podcasts and she reached out to me. And so we were talking about books. After we talked, I said, you're a public speaker. I would really appreciate any feedback since you listened to my podcast. And she said that I was very serious until a certain point in the podcast. She said, and then you lightened up. She said, use humor more. So this is one of the things that I've been sort of wondering about is if I come across as being too serious or maybe intimidating to people because of that seriousness. And so I'm gonna have to start learning some book jokes.
That's good. Yeah, yeah.
I'm actually very lighthearted, but
Yes.
when you're
I know you are,
consulting,
'cause I've known you for,
yeah,
yes, for a
when
few
you're
years.
consulting with people, you want them to have some confidence that you're not some joker, some stand-up comedy, person. So, and also as I've been around. It's not like I'm 25 anymore, it's like been there, done that. You get a certain kind of edge after a while where it's sort of like, you've seen an awful lot and there's nothing new under the sun. So if you want to tell me how different you are as a client, I can tell you I've seen a lot of you.
Well, thank you for playing, Lindsay. Thank you for
You're welcome.
playing. And then thank you for being as a guest. It's been great to catch up with you.
Yeah,
Um, and if anything resonated with our listeners, we will post links on how to connect with Lindsay for her website and LinkedIn. So connect with her. And again, thank you, Lindsay. I will talk to you soon.
you're welcome, Elle, and thanks for the opportunity. Talk
Absolutely.
later.